welcome everyone. My name is Dan Schindler here with my colleague Paul Ray. We are Anders CPAs and Advisors, and we are here for another episode of PPP with Paul and Dan. As we know, PPP funds must be spent on at least 60% payroll costs and up to 40% of non-payroll costs to achieve maximum loan forgiveness. The Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2020, which was signed into law on December 27th, expanded the definition of eligible non-payroll cost. As we discussed in our video last week, the Consolidated Appropriations Act allowed eligible businesses to claim the employee retention tax credit even if a PPP loan was received. Today, we want to take a few minutes and review those eligible non-payroll costs, which are more important now than they previously were when it comes to maximizing the employee retention credit as well as PPP loan forgiveness. Paul, I'll turn it over to you now to discuss these eligible non-payroll costs.
Well, thanks, Dan. I think we've kind of covered the big four, which really haven't changed from the first package: payroll, rent, mortgage interest on real and personal property, and utilities. But our focus today really is on the expanded non-payroll eligible costs that were part of the new stimulus package. We'll just kind of start with the first one: the covered property damage costs. So costs related to property damages or vandalism or looting due to the public disturbances that occurred in 2020. You can use those as eligible costs, but they can't be reimbursed by insurance. Covered worker protection expenses. So operating or capital expenditures to facilitate the change of business activities that was related to COVID. This may include purchases, maintenance or renovation of assets that create or expand things like drive-through window facilities, indoor-outdoor, air pressure ventilation or filtration systems, physical barriers such as sneeze guards that you sometimes see in stores or in restaurants. Expansion of additional indoor, outdoor, or combined business spaces, on-site, off-site health screening capabilities. Those are all important eligible costs. Covered operation expenditures. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this, maybe more than the other categories, but payment of any business software or cloud computing service that facilitates business operations, product or service delivery systems, processing, payment, or tracking of payroll expenses, human resource expenses, sales and billing functions, near and dear to our heart, accounting or tracking of supplies, inventory, and record expenses. All those are eligible costs. I wanted to step back just a moment to talk about, though, the business software and cloud computing services, because the SBA left that a little broad, and I think it's probably on purpose, because it would really be impossible to define all areas or costs that could be covered. So Anders Technology, which is our tech advisory team here at the firm, has really been assisting clients in several different areas. One is data analytics. Setting up a data management program to make your company more competitive, in today's new world is going to be critically important. Dashboards and reports for management are going to be equally critical. So I think this is a great area. Cloud readiness assessments. Migration to the cloud computing services will be key in preparing your company to reduce overall costs, and I think that's clearly important in this environment. Number three, preparing your business to work remotely for some or all of your employees. Clearly we used to say that is the wave of the future, but really it's here, and there's no way to avoid it. My personal favorite is the last one is cybersecurity, and need I say more? The criminals are just one step ahead of us in most instances. They don't take time off during the pandemic while most of us were locked up. They were working overtime. This is their Super Bowl. Companies are getting hacked and they're getting compromised every day, and it's an expensive lesson. So we are going to invite one of our experts here at Anders to spend some time in the future on a video just going into more detail. And last but not least are the covered supplier costs, which include payments made to a supplier of goods that meet the following criteria: that was essential to the operations of your business, and the payment was made pursuant to a contract or an order or a purchase order that was either in effect at any time before the covered period, or in the instance of perishable goods only, in effect at any time prior to the end of the covered period.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. That's all great information. And really one thing to expand on here as it relates to covered supplier costs, for those in the restaurant and hospitality industry, this is particularly important. Perishable goods are eligible non-payroll costs to be used for PPP loan forgiveness. Since labor and perishable goods make up a large amount of the total expenses, maximizing non-payroll costs with perishable goods is a great way to maximize your employee retention credit with payroll and wages. I know there isn't enough time to cover everything on this, but hopefully these highlights are useful enough for business owners to consider exploring these opportunities further. With that, we'll wrap up this episode and see you next week for another edition of PPP with Paul and Dan. Thank you for joining.